The following is a Candlepin Stars and Strikes rebroadcast featuring some of our most memorable programs.
Candlepin Stars and Strikes.
Look at this. Look at this.
Candlepin Stars and Strikes is sponsored in part by Somerville Lumber. Looks good. Looks good. That's the girl. It's a Candlepin Stars and Strikes is produced in conjunction with the New Hampshire Candlepin Bowling Association. And now your hosts, Doug Brown and Dan Murphy.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Park Place Lanes here in Windham, New Hampshire for another week of bowling here on the Winds. This is week 2 of our new season, and if you missed it last week in the season opener, Brian Uphold knocked off Mike Poulin. So today, Brian will be looking for his second win in a row.
That's right. Early in year number 9, trying to make it 2 in a row, and he's got a tough opponent, a guy named Peter Flynn.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about him in a second. Let's first of all introduce you to our number 4 seed, returning after winning last week from Londonderry, New Hampshire, Brian Uphold.
Okay, Brian comes in averaging 125, has a high single of 205, and his roll-off score 707.
And we should mention also that last week kind of a breakthrough for Brian as well, because it was his first win here on the Winds.
That's right, absolutely. He's been with us 2 other times, and he's yet to post a win. Last week is first, and he's hoping he's going to keep it going.
And he threw that 400 triple to boot. Okay, so now Brian will try and make it 2 in a row, and he will face our number 3 seed from Haverhill, Massachusetts. Pleasure to welcome back Peter Flynn.
Absolutely. One of the greats, averaging 129, 208 for high single. His roll-off score 712.
All right, and of course we have our bonus ball contest coming up as always. That'll be at the end of the hour. We have $40 in the jackpot. We'll tell you more about that a little later on. We'll tell you about Stars and Strikes doubles, which will come up later today at 5 o'clock here on the Winds. But we've got a good match coming. Brian Uphold and Peter Flynn. We're going to get things going right after we get to these messages. Don't go away. Okay, once again, if you were not with us for the first show of the brand new season, last week Brian Uphold knocked off Mike Poulin. So Brian now slides up to face our number 3 seed Peter Flynn. The winner of this match draws Bruno DeFeo next week. And 2 weeks from today here on Stars and Strikes, we'll get our first qualifier for our 5th annual Tournament of Champions, as Peter Pereira will come in to defend that number 1 spot. First ball of the match, Brian Uphold. And he'll shoot at the 6-7 with wood. Could be makeable.
Right at the 6, and hopefully he's got a deep enough. Well, he had to go down low. Try to turn that piece of wood into the 7 pin. And it's a 9.
Right on it again. This time he punches out the 1, the 5, and the 8. In his win last week over Mike Poulin, Brian had 17 marks, 16 spares, and 1 strike. And he almost needed every one of them to hold off a late charge by Mike Poulin.
It was a lot of bowling by both bowlers the last 5 boxes of that 3rd game. So opening 16 for 2 frames for Brian Uphold, and now hearty welcome back to Peter Flynn.
No question. I'm sure many of you who are regular viewers of Stars and Strikes and fans of Candlepin bowling are aware that it was just about a year ago at this time that Peter Flynn was stricken with a rather severe medical situation, and he has come all the way back, and here he is back on television. Just a terrific story. Actually, Peter, I was talking with him before the show began. He very nearly qualified last spring for our final taping of the year last spring. But he came back with a vengeance this time, a 7-12 to finish 3rd in this roll-off.
And I understand that he threw a real big final game, too. I should have talked to him before the match. I think it was a 170 something, the 5th game in that roll-off.
Must have been a lot of big games, so these top 5
That's
guys.
true.
All
That's
over
true.
700.
I think someone said that he had a 175.
Peter's got it for the mark in the second. And he's going to clear out a loose ball before Brian Uphold steps back up.
Oh boy, right back on the head pin this time. The 1, 8, and 9, losing the spread eagle plus the 5 pin, which if you have to shoot at it, it's not a bad pin to have in there.
Well, that's 3 times that Brian's been on the head pin. The first time he had the 6, 7. Then he punched out the 1, 5, 8. This time the 1, 8, 9. Still looking for that first mark. And of course, this time he misses it, and he's got something to shoot at.
And he's got the best break he's had. 4 horsemen left. 1, 2, 4, and 7. Piece of wood in behind the 1 and the 2 should help. Even if he misses the head pin, hits the 2, he's got a shot at it. But no doubt, just splits the 1, 2, and just everything goes. First mark for Brian. Now Peter Flynn will fill the spare in the second. Does that with an 8 drop, 5 and 8 pins left.
The 5 and the 8. With no wood, and Peter knew it. Pulled up right away. Peter and his wife Deborah have 2 children, 10-year-old Sean and 7-year-old Craig. They live in Bradford. I believe I said Haverhill earlier, but it's actually Bradford. It's nearby. Bradford is right near Haverhill.
Right.
Pretty little town.
It's down the road a piece.
That's right. Peter does a lot of his bowling at the Pilgrim Lanes in Haverhill. See, I knew there was a Haverhill in there somewhere. And Peter bowls for Grandpa's Printing in Lawrence. Looking for a deflection. Doesn't get it.
.47 through 4. Brian Uphold now 34 with a bonus ball to come.
As always, the presenting sponsor of Candlepin, Stars and Strikes, Tri-State Megabucks. Just imagine being rich. Give it a try. You just never know. Tri-State Megabucks. And going for all of them, works it out with an 8.
Disappointing first 5 for Brian Uphold. Left 9 pins standing. That's a little better.
Leaves no pins standing that time. First strike of the match for either bowler.
That time he was just straight into the 1-2 pocket. Converts it for the first strike of the match. His second mark. Now Peter Flynn for his 5th and 6th. And he too takes a bite out of the head pin. Flush straight back, 2-4-7 on the left with a 3-6 on the right. Tries the 3-6.
Last time Peter was here was just about a year ago, October 27th, 1991, as he clears it for a 10. Peter in that match came in as the #1 seed, but lost to Dave Richards, allowing Dave Richards to move into last year's Tournament of Champions. Peter was in the Tournament of Champions back in the spring of '91 as he taps the 6 pin. Peter was the #6 seed in the 1991 Tournament of Champions and came in for the first match of that tournament against Tim Lipke, and that was one of the better matches we've ever had here. as Tim Lipke threw a 467 to beat Peter, who threw a 426, as he records the spare in the 6th. This is on a strike.
Missing the headpin, leaves the 1, the 5, and the 7. Piece of wood that may come in handy for him. A couple pieces.
No. Speed of the ball will often determine what that first pin does when you hit it. And that time, Brian throws the ball pretty hard. That pin just lifted right up and never touched anything else.
Brian moves over to lane 31 and throws another strike. That's 2 in a row over there. Unfortunately, he had to go over to lane 32 in between. This time he picks on the 1-3 pocket. Result is the same. Very quick strike. Peter Flynn now working on a spare in the 6th. Leading by just 4 pins.
Oh, big ball there. That's strike on spare for Peter Flynn.
And quickly the lead goes to 14. Just tripping the 4-pin. Peter looking for a double.
Wow, how could they both stay up? I thought at least one of them would go down.
I think Peter and I were both looking for a double strike. Now he's looking at the 7-10. Another spare lead for Peter Flynn. He's off a little today. He usually picks those up. Works out for 10. 106 through 8. 23 pin advantage, but that'll drop a little bit. Brian Uphold working on a strike. Wants that wood to turn a little bit or get out of the way. Well, nestles right against the 3-pin. It's right at the 3-pin, just drive everything back.
Oh,
and he needs some
yes.
help. Whoa.
Just caught it on the second time by.
See the ball caroms away this time, and he needs some help with the 5-pin off the wall, and here comes the help he needed.
Oh, and he takes advantage. Strike on spare.
3 strikes in a row on lane 31.
Whew. And none of them have been cheapies.
He's trying to go to the commissioner of bowling and see if he can bowl the entire game on lane 31, but. And another one.
Oh,
and another
yes,
one.
Sir.
4 consecutive strikes on that lane.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure he's glad to have the double. But you ask any of the bowlers, if you had a chance to get the double in the 10th or say the 7th or 8th, they'd take it earlier in the game. Can't get the full effect of that double if it's at the end, but that's going to be a great opening game. From 73 in the 7th, only 3 pins over the 100 mark, ends with 140.
95 pins in the last 5 boxes.
Right. 67 in the last 3. My.
Peter Flynn will have to mark to maintain his lead, and he strikes in the 9th.
Now last week we waited a long time for our strikes. This week, not wasting any time at all, both bowlers.
That's 6 already. 7.
There's a double.
7.
Right in the 1-3 pocket. 5 falls into the 4-pin for the double strike. He's already at 136, and he's got a few more bonus balls to come. So he'll take the lead. Just a matter of how many.
Well, that'll cost him a little bit, that ball. He's at 144. Plus this ball. And make it an 8 for a 148. And Peter Flynn does maintain his lead by 8. How about that for an opening game? Stick around. 2 more to come here on Stars and Strikes. We'll be back. This is game 2, and this is Peter Flynn with an 8-pin lead. Pretty explosive first game for both bowlers.
Look at the bottom half of that first game. Those last 10 boxes, we had 8 marks, including 2 doubles. Well, actually 9 marks if you count the double. And that's a lot of them, anyways.
Well, you take the scores only from the second half. It was 95 for Brian Uphold, 91 for Peter Flynn.
Wow.
Peter now on lane 31, just catches the head pin, and here's another one of those big spare leaves that Peter likes so much.
Kinda wish that head pin stood up that time. So he leaves himself the 7 and the 8. He's trying to coax that piece of wood to stop. Without it, he's in trouble. With it, well, at least got a chance. Just going to hit the wood and hope he gets some help.
Nope.
Good try.
Yeah, it'll be a 9 box for Pete. Let's check it out, see what happened when that wood was capped. Ooh. Brian Uphold now.
2, 4, 5, and 7. 4 pins in the left-hand corner. Watch out. Almost got it.
One of our participating sponsors in this series on Stars and Strikes, the folks at Somerville Lumber, where you can get it right the first time. Somerville Lumber. And there's
5 strikes in a row.
Well,
on
he
lane 31.
missed after the double. He threw a 7 on.
I'm not counting that. That
So
was
it's
a
5
fill.
out of 6.
That was a fill.
5 out of 6. That's incredible, isn't it?
It really is.
And does Peter have one? Let's give it a minute. No. 12 boxes. Brian Uphold has thrown 5 strikes already.
That's right. He had the fill on the double, which wasn't another strike, but wow. He loves that lane 31.
Peter using the wood as a guide. No, he doesn't. He just takes the 10-pin straight for the spare. Six marks for Peter. Just coming up short of the head pin.
Left the ball off to the left. 7-pin drop on the spare. The 1, 8, and 10.
But with the wood, who knows?
Makeable shot. First object to do, our first task is to hit the head pin. We'll need some help for the other 2. No problem. 2 in a row. You see the replay. Head pin goes down and takes the 10. Ball and the piece of wood carry through for the 8. Brian Uphold working on a strike.
Oh, pulled that one. He can be fortunate now that he is working on a strike. Has a chance to recover. And fills it with an 8. And a 10 box. But the big story now is that Brian Uphold moves back to lane 31, where 5 of the last 6 balls he has thrown have been strikes. Oh, well, payback is a terrible thing, I guess.
Says, well, he's going to be on the head pin again, but one extreme to the other there. Hit the object pin, the head pin, got just that in the 5.
And of course, always the danger of the bad box when you chop on your first ball.
Oh, yeah.
Gets out of it with a 7. We'll take a timeout. When we return, Peter Flynn has a mark to fill, and he has the lead but not by much. Here in week 2 on Candlepin Stars and Strikes. We'll be back. Peter Flynn to fill a spare here in the 4th, game 2. Peter's lead right now is at 7, plus whatever he takes on this bonus ball, and he'll take 7 more.
Thought he actually started to put up 2 pins like he might get the half Worcester, but I'm sure he feels very fortunate, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 10. Trying to make it 3 marks in a row.
Yes.
He does. Let's see, Peter, when he gets a break, he usually cashes in on it.
Watch Peter's backswing, that long and graceful high backswing. He gets the ball back farther and higher, I think, than just about anybody else in the game. His form looks just about the same as it always did. Really hasn't changed at all. Remarkable comeback.
No effort at all, really. And just devastating when he's on. It's kind of fun to watch him.
Oh, another one. That's 3 consecutive marks that he's made after 7 fills. And these shots have not been easy. 4th mark in a row overall for Peter.
Brian Uphold comes right back on the head pin. 2, 5, and 8 pins left. Got to be heavy on the 2 pin. Try to drive it straight back. Like that.
Nice shot.
Very nice shot. Trying to put a little fire on the, little water on the fire, I should say, that Peter's got going on. String of 4 marks, trying to start a string of his own.
Right back on the head pin on lane 31, but not a good break this time.
3, 6, 4, 7. Ooh, very close. Trying to make a few shots of his own.
Last year, I believe we mentioned it maybe 1 or 2 times briefly, but we certainly want to call your attention now because it's imminent. The opening of the New England Sports Museum down at the Cambridge Side Galleria Mall in Cambridge, Mass. And the reason we particularly want to point it to your attention as Peter Flynn fills his spare with a 9, everything but the head pin. The reason we particularly want to point it out to you now is because when the Sports Museum opens, which should be in just a few weeks, there is going to be a specific, separate Candlepin bowling section of the museum. And Peter misfires on the single pin.
He kind of smiles. You say, how can I miss a single like that? And I just made some terrific spares 2 or 3 boxes earlier.
He'll take a 10. The Sports Museum, of course, is really going to be a special place. If you haven't had a chance to visit the preview gallery, which has been open for quite some time now in the mall, the full museum will be open shortly, although as of our taping date, we have no idea what the exact date will be, but we'll certainly keep you posted as best we can and let you know when it is open, but it is certainly worth the trip down to Cambridge. It is really going to be something. And of course, the Candlepin bowling exhibit specifically, largely due to the efforts of the executive committee of the ICBA and also a guy named Bob Perella, who has been a longtime supporter of Candlepin Stars and Strikes and Candlepin bowling in general, the owner of Paramount Industries in Medway, and of course provider of some prizes for us here on Stars and Strikes. Bob has been a real driving force behind the establishment of Candlepin bowling within the New England Sports Museum.
Absolutely. Bob's done a lot of work.
And he's also pretty fun at parties.
Never lost for words. That's Bob Perella. Ooh, disappointing 5 for Brian. Last 2 boxes, 7 and 5. And now the lead balloons to 32-24 in this game. also be some fundraisers coming up for the exhibit, and I'm sure many of you will be involved. There'll be some bowl-a-thons and some golf tournaments and a lot of different things going on to help support the Candlepin exhibit at the Sports Museum.
Like the rest of the museum, the Candlepin segment of it is going to have a lot of interactive type features and videos as well, and it's really going to be something. Oh my,
boy.
How about the 2-pin?
Slid that pin over.
The 2-pin is now to the left, really, of the 4-pin, just a little bit. How do you play this shot, Dan?
Well, I'd kind of reach for the reset button, but he was going to go after the wood on the right,
Oof,
and that's the pin that slid over.
that's right. Might have had it if it had been on its spot.
114 through 9. We'll be talking more about the Sports Museum throughout the season this year, so.
Oh, not quite for Peter, the 7-pin. Yeah, and I want to mention also that we had a chance to actually see a preview of what it was going to look like up at the ICBA convention this past summer, and boy, it is really something.
We had the name of the architects, but they've same people who did the let me see, the Basketball Hall of Fame,
right?
And they also did the
a number of other
things
public
in
buildings.
Boston. Yeah,
yeah.
Did great
Not only
job.
in Boston, but elsewhere around the country
Right.
too. I believe, I believe it's Cambridge 7.
That's right.
Is
That's
that
the
it?
name. Yes,
That's it.
Cambridge 7.
And a representative from the architectural firm, and also Dave Cowens, who of course is the former Celtic great and the chairman of the Sports Museum, came up to the convention last summer and really impressed the crowd, I think, with
Yes.
all of their plans. Everybody was quite impressed.
Brian Uphold, here's final 2. Needs to put some marks up.
2-string total 279 for Peter Flynn, by the way, with that mark in the 10th. That was his 10th mark of the match.
Brian's looking at the 3 and the 10.
Oh, yes.
Very nicely done. Played it on the inside, have the ball carry him off the 3 for the 10, and a much needed mark in the 9th. Still has to contend with a spare 7. Peter's posted already.
He's on his good lane,
I
though.
was just going to say, he's on his lane. This time, not the strike, but a good 9-pin drop, and wants the wood to stay out of the way if at all possible. And
Well, this mark could be critical because if Brian can get it, he could keep the lead under 20 going into the 3rd game.
he's got room to get by the front piece of wood, but not much. Very delicate shot. No, he's going to catch it, but only caught a little bit of it, enough to carry the ball through. You saw the big sigh from Brian as he walked back.
Well, I think he thought, as I did, that if he capped the wood like that, he probably wouldn't have the shot. Well, now a big fill ball here to try and cut his deficit, working into game 3, and he lost it to the left, just 3. 114 for Brian, a 2-string total 254. So the lead will be 25 for Peter Flynn going into game 3. We'll come back to decide it after these words. Well, it's Brian Uphold's turn to begin the 3rd game. And he's in a 25-pin hole right now.
Well, I'm sure he's thinking of last week against Mike Poulin where he had the big lead, and Mike Poulin made a run at him. He's hoping the same thing could happen to him against Peter.
I would also imagine that he spent quite a bit of time during that last break thinking about that fill ball in the 10th.
Almost looked like he overthrew that one. Looked like he tried to get a little extra on it, but certainly not his pinning well.
Brian has 10 marks, each bowler with 10 marks. Back on the head pin, needs a break, doesn't get it on the 4 pin. The 4 and the 10.
Play this one on the right-hand tip, might hit the wood, the second piece of wood, and snap towards the 10. See what happens. He's going to go right down the middle.
Nothing doing. $10 for Brian.
Next week's challenger, Bruno DeFeo. Been with us before. In fact, was on one of the Tournament of Champions last year, right?
No, I don't believe so. I think that photographic memory of yours is letting you down here.
No, I think I'm right.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I'm right. All you people who think I'm right, call W. No. Wasn't last year, the year before then. He was the 5th seed. You buy lunch if I'm right. And I'll buy you another drink if I'm wrong.
Well, get your money out.
Really?
Yep. No, Bruno's only been with us one previous time, and that was back in March of 1990. And he lost that match to Tom Morgan. That was the only other time he's been on with us. He qualified, actually I should say he qualified as an alternate for one of our tapings last year and would actually have been on. We had an injury to one of the bowlers, but Bruno was unable to be here and did not get on. So actually Bruno has only been on with us once before.
Know who I'm getting Bruno mixed up with, and I'll think of his name in a second.
You can think of it after you buy me the next drink you're going to buy me.
Yeah, gee. Fellow who looks like him a little bit. I'll think of it.
Spare for Brian Uphold. Important mark right there, because he was fortunate to dodge a bullet with Peter Flynn putting up 2 open frames. And now he's going to try and do something about cutting into the lead. Well, he had the 4-10 last time on lane 31. Now he's got the 6-7.
It sounds better, but it's not.
Well, he was trying to make it. If he had been able to just slice that 6-pin over into that piece of wood.
Yeah, he had a shot at it.
Not there. 44 through 4. He does put 1 mark up, though. He's got to be thinking at least 1 mark and probably 2 every time he goes up there. Because you got to assume that Peter Flynn's going to put 1 up every time he goes up.
Trying to coax that 6-pin over. 2, 4, 7, and the 6. Wood rolling out. Yeah, he's still going to have to go after the 2-pin.
Peter was funny before the show. We always have the bowlers roll their 1 ball for our slow motion replay that you see at the beginning of the show when we introduce the bowlers. And it obviously is a split screen in television terminology, and so the crew has come to shorten that to just splits. So when they line the bowlers up to do those shots, they call them splits. So Peter obviously hadn't been here for a year or so, and when one of the crew guys asked him to get ready to do splits, he said, he was all concerned.
Well, did the rest of the bowlers have to do those? I wasn't here for those.
But he was relieved when he found out what we were talking about. Of course, little does he know that if he actually tried to do splits, the crew probably wouldn't stop him.
That's right.
Brian Uphold has cut 7 pins off the lead. It's 18 now with 6 boxes remaining. We'll be back to finish in a minute. Brian Uphold ready to go.
Show me a shot.
Stu Bergman. That's who I was trying to think of before. And Bruno reminds me of him. And I'm sure everyone at home is going to say, "You're right, Dan." Please. In fact, they come from the same area, don't they? Or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Stu is from Brighton and Bruno from East Boston. So you're not really losing it, Dan. It
No.
just appears that way from time to time. Oh, big break for Brian there on the 10-pin, and he needed a break.
He's got a testy piece of wood out in front. Got room to get by it. In fact, more room than what you see of that camera shot. But no, he played it. I was going to say not enough room, but looked like that's what he was doing.
12th mark for Brian Uphold, and that puts a little bit of heat on Peter Flynn. Should he roll 2 open frames here, it could get a little more interesting.
He's going to have to contend with the 4 horsemen left. Brian actually is within 2 marks of Peter, and he has 1 posted already. And there's an open frame there. He can gain 2 and count. He's opposite an 8 box by Brian.
There's the 10, so the lead is at 20, but now there's the spare to contend with. Peter Flynn's overall record with us on Stars and Strikes is 10-4. As you might expect, he's been very successful here, and that's part of the reason why. Big strike. His first mark of this 3rd game.
See the 8-pin and then finally the 5-pin. Brian Uphold working on a spare. Needs a big fill. That's pretty big.
Yep.
Oh, he's got 1 working on lane 32. Now he goes over on his lane 31. You see the replay of that strike, just tripping the 4-pin, looking for the double.
Wow.
Through the middle.
Come on, work it out. Come on.
Oh, what a shot. What a shot.
Too good.
Through the 2-pin in between the 3 and 6. It came back. Good 8 fill on the strike, but he will really want to put another mark up.
All right, Brian.
8 box, 100 through 8.
Let's see him cut that 2-pin over. Through the 3 and the 6, back, takes the 6-pin out of there. Great effort.
98 through 8, not 100 for Brian Uphold. 98 through 8. Peter Flynn working on a strike. Looking for the double, and that close.
Seven pin all by itself. Does have a piece of wood to the right, but he'll shoot right at the 7-pin.
Oh,
It's just sliding by.
well,
They'll lose 1 in count there. And a few more here.
well, the lead is now 10, but he is opposite an 8. So this will be an opportunity here for Peter to solidify his lead going into the final 2.
Anything can happen with a 10-pin advantage.
Peter spins that one right into the pocket, but look at the result. The 3, 4, 6.
He wants that wood to come up. It's going to make it a lot easier if that wood freezes against the 4-pin, which I think it did. He can actually now play it on the inside, and he has got a chance of kicking the wood forward for the 4-pin. Oh, he did, and he left the 6.
He thought he had it.
Well, Brian's going to have a chance. He's going to need at least 1 mark, 1 big one, but he preferred 2.
Because the lead is 12. 12 pins, Peter Flynn's lead, going into the final 2 frames.
Can't assume Peter Flynn is going to throw a bad frame, so you're going to need probably 2 marks. 1 anyways. That looks pretty good.
Oh, that's a strike. Big one for Brian Uphold.
That's the best kind of get, too. You don't have to shoot at anything.
Fires the right fist into the air after those last 2 pins went down. The 5 and the 10 kick out.
Well, he's on his lane 31. A little drought over there lately. Let's see. Lost that one.
Wow.
Well, he needs it, I'd say at least 8 or 9 and fill, if not the spare. And he's got to hope Peter gives him some help. I don't know if that's going to be enough.
An 8-box, a 123, and a 3-string total 377. And Peter does not need to mark. He needs just 14 pins to win the match. Took a quick glance over to the scoreboard. So he knows exactly what he's got to do, and there's a half Worcester.
Many times has he bowled in front of the cameras and had less than 14 in 2 boxes?
I'd say none.
9. Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
If I was going to make that bet, you'd have to give me some odds.
There's 10. He needs 4 more to win. Peter looked like he would probably be a shoo-in for a 400 after 2 games, but he won't get that. But he will get the win with those 4 pins right there. That's it.
I think Brian's going to go back and look at this match, not necessarily the marks that he missed, but the pins that he didn't get with the 3rd ball. There's a spread eagle,
Ooh.
almost. Both bowlers nearly converting the spread eagle. In this game alone, Brian's left 10 pins standing.
Peter Flynn returns to Candlepin Stars and Strikes with a win, but he had to sweat it out over the last few boxes, taking it over Brian Uphold 384 to 377. We'll be back with a bonus ball contest and a chat with the bowlers in a minute. And welcome back to Park Place Lanes here in Windham. Doug Brown along with Dan Murphy and a very enthusiastic crowd as they've just seen a terrific match. Peter Flynn, a little challenge at the end there from Brian Uphold, but he manages to hang on for the win.
Yeah, Brian kind of struggled in that match a little bit, but enough to carry down the last few frames.
Well, now we're in a situation where we're left with our top 3 seeds, but still, the way the scores ran for these roll-offs, I hesitate to say what might happen these next 2 shows because all these guys have been. I mean, you figure every guy in this series averaged 140 or better for the roll-off.
Yeah, you can't say anyone's a favorite. Another. Peter's got the reputation, but some of those other bowlers that are coming on have been here before, so it should be good going down the wire.
All right, let's meet both bowlers. First of all, a round of applause for Brian Uphold, who will come on in here and accept the check for 4th place, $175. Slide right in here, Brian. And now that was a kind of a strange thing that happened. You had, for a while, you had lane 31 really cooking, and you had all those strikes, and then all of a sudden, every time you hit the head pin on lane 31, it was a spread eagle or a punch out or whatever.
That was pathetic. I couldn't throw the same ball twice, and you can't win matches doing that. I didn't pin well at all, and if you don't do that, you're not going to win.
But yet it still came down really to the strike fill in the 9th frame.
I pitched out, threw the ball to 3 pin, and I just didn't deserve the win. I just bowled lousy.
Well, we hope that you enjoy the 4th place check, $175, and perhaps we'll see you again before the year is over.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Brian. Brian Uphold, our runner-up on this week's show. And now we'll call on Peter Flynn to roll our bonus ball on lane 31 as we look for a match for $40 in cash and also for a couple of brand new sets of bowling balls from Paramount Industries in Medway, Mass. Uh-oh. You got any 2s in there?
I think there's 1, but I can't find it.
Oh, boy. Are you going to hear about that, Peter? It's a 6, so not a match, shockingly enough. For Harriet McGee from North Andover, Mass., who says, love your show. We love you too, Harriet. Thanks very much. And not a match, but you'll be receiving a gift from us from TV50 and the NHCBA. And congratulations, sir. Slide right on in here so we can get you on camera. You had to kind of rough it out there a little bit at the end, but managed to hang on for the win.
Just hang on. Wasn't pretty, but
but you'll take it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about next week's match. First of all, you've got Bruno DeFeo coming in, Peter Pereira 2 weeks down the line. If it goes that far, your thoughts on that? You'll be back next week, of course.
Yeah, one at a time. Bruno's first, and you can't look past Bruno, that's for sure. I wouldn't do that, and he's a good bowler. It should be a good match.
I said this to you earlier off camera, and I don't mean to embarrass you on camera, but certainly everybody who's a fan of Candlepin bowling is very aware of what you've gone through in the past year. And I know we're all just thrilled to see you back and as good as ever and throwing the ball well. And it's really good to see you back. And I'm sure this has got to be a special moment for you, too, in a way.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's fun to be back.
Again, congratulations, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
All right, Peter. Thanks very much. Congratulations. And really, can't say enough. It's just a very inspiring story. Peter's kind of a humble guy. He won't say much about it, but it's a terrific story, and we're happy to see him back here.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at the ladder and talk about next week's match. Peter will be looking for his second win in a row. Bruno DeFeo from East Boston, Mass. will be in to be the challenger.
Very formidable opponent. He's been with us before and threw some decent scores, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, don't forget, we've got Stars and Strikes doubles coming up at 5 o'clock this afternoon here on The Winds. Please join us next Sunday at 12 noon when we will have our semifinal match between Peter Flynn and Bruno DeFeo here on Stars and Strikes. Until then, for Dan Murphy and the whole crew, I'm Doug Brown. Have a good week, everybody.